never thought my marriage would end like this. I had imagined many things over the years. Maybe a slow drift apart, maybe a devastating argument over something real. But not this. Not my own husband accusing me of something I would never do. Not infidelity. It started on a quiet Friday evening, the kind where everything should have been normal. I had just finished setting the table for dinner, a simple meal of pasta and red wine, when Ethan walked in with a look I couldn't quite place. His usual easygoing expression was gone, replaced by something cold, distant. "Sit down, Emma," he said, his voice clipped. A chill ran through me. I obeyed, watching as he set his phone on the table between us. There was something unsettling in his rigid posture, the way he clenched his fists. Then, with no warning, he said the words that shattered my world. "I know you've been cheating on me." At first, I thought I had misheard him. I let out a small laugh. A mistake. His expression darkened. "You think this is funny?" I blinked rapidly, my mind racing. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" "You and another man," he said, his voice laced with anger. "Don't lie to me." I felt my stomach drop. He was serious. This wasn't some cruel joke. He actually believed it. "Ethan, I would never." "Don't," he snapped, shoving his phone toward me. "I have proof." With trembling fingers, I picked up his phone and looked at the screen. There was a picture of me talking to a man I barely even knew. It was taken outside my workplace, where I had been speaking with a client. The angle made it seem more intimate than it was, but I knew the truth. This wasn't an affair. But Ethan didn't believe me. "I swear to you this is nothing," I whispered. He scoffed. "Right. You expect me to believe that?" "Yes. Because it's the truth." Ethan stood up so suddenly that the chair scraped against the floor. "I trusted you, Emma," he said, his voice low but dangerous. "I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me." I felt my heart break. This was the man I had loved. The man I had built a life with. And he was looking at me like I was a stranger. "Ethan, please," I begged. "Don't do this." His jaw clenched. "You did this to yourself." He turned and walked toward the door. Panic surged through me. "Where are you going?" I called out. He didn't look back. "To be with someone who actually deserves me." The door slammed shut behind him. And just like that, my marriage was over. Or at least I thought it was. Because what I didn't know was that Ethan's own betrayal was far worse than anything he had accused me of. I sat there in silence, staring at the untouched dinner on the table. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, wanting to call him to fix this, but something stopped me. Would he even listen? Or was he already in the arms of someone else? Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not until I knew the whole truth. Because deep down, something about this felt off. And I was going to find out what. No matter what it took. The night Ethan walked out, I stayed frozen at the dining table for what felt like hours. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. My untouched plate of food sat in front of me, the pasta now cold and unappetizing. I kept replaying his words over and over. "You did this to yourself. To be with someone who actually deserves me." Those words stung. But more than that, they felt rehearsed. Something about this didn't add up. Yes, the picture was misleading, but Ethan had never been the jealous type. He had never accused me of anything before. So why was he suddenly so sure that I was cheating? Why didn't he even let me explain? Plus, he wanted an excuse. That thought made my stomach turn. Because if Ethan had needed a reason to leave, then that meant one thing. There was someone else. The realization hit me so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. Had I been so blind this whole time? I forced myself to move, to do something. I pulled out my laptop and started scrolling through old texts, emails, anything that could give me a clue. And that's when I saw it. An email from Ethan's work account, dated 2 weeks ago. It was short, but it sent a chill down my spine. "You're right. It's time. She won't see it coming." Who is she? My hands trembled as I searched for more, scanning through his messages. And then, buried deep in his email archive, I found another email. One he had received from an unknown sender. It was just one line. "I miss you. When can I see you again?" My breath hitched. This wasn't just paranoia. There was someone else. Ethan? He had accused me of his own sins. A bitter laugh escaped me. How convenient. He had painted himself as the victim, storming out on me, making me look like the unfaithful one. When all along, he was the liar. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for answers. I grabbed my coat and my keys, determination burning in my chest. I had spent years being the perfect wife. The loyal wife. The one who never questioned him. Not anymore. If he thought he could play me for a fool, he was dead wrong. I drove straight to his office. It was late, but I knew he wasn't home. I needed to see something with my own eyes. The building was mostly empty, but the security guard knew me from past visits and let me through without question. I walked down the hall toward his office, my heartbeat hammering. Then just as I reached his door, I heard voices inside. A woman's soft, playful laugh. And Ethan's voice, lower, affectionate. The way he used to sound with me. I didn't hesitate. I pushed the door open. And there they were. Ethan. And her. His mistress. The woman he had left me for. And when I saw who she was, everything changed. Because this wasn't just some random woman. It wasn't a coworker or an old flame. It was someone I knew. Someone who had been close to us all along. And that was when I knew. This was only the beginning. The moment my eyes landed on her, the world stopped. Sitting on Ethan's desk, wearing a silky, low-cut blouse and an expression of pure satisfaction, was Olivia. My closest friend. My bridesmaid. The woman I had trusted for years. No. She was the one my husband had left me for. Ethan's face went pale as I stepped inside, but Olivia? She just smirked, tilting her head like she was enjoying the moment. I had spent so much time grieving my marriage, thinking maybe I had done something wrong. But standing there in that office, everything became clear. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. It wasn't about Ethan suddenly thinking I had cheated. It was about him needing an excuse to justify his own betrayal. And Olivia? She had been waiting for this moment. For me to find out. For me to finally know that she had won. I let out a breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Tad, I smiled. Well, I said, crossing my arms. Now everything makes sense. Ethan stepped forward. Emma, but I held up my hand. Save it. Olivia laughed softly, twirling a strand of her perfectly styled blonde hair. Oh, don't look so surprised, sweetheart, she purred. You had to know this was coming. I turned to her, my voice sharp. Actually, I didn't. Because unlike you, Olivia, I don't spend my life stabbing people in the back. She sighed dramatically. Oh, Emma. Don't be so dramatic. We both know you and Ethan were falling apart. I turned to Ethan, staring him down. You accused me of cheating, I said slowly, anger burning in my veins. When all along you were sleeping with her? Ethan looked away, ashamed. But Olivia? He just grinned. And that was when I knew she had never been my friend. She had always been waiting. Watching. Ready to destroy me the first chance she got. I had two choices. I could let this break me. Or I could show them both that I was so much stronger than they ever imagined. So I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders and smiled. You know what, Olivia? I said, my voice calm, almost amused. You can have him. He blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me. I turned to Ethan, tilting my head. Tell me, does she know? Ethan stiffened. Know what? I stepped forward, lowering my voice like I was telling a secret. Does she know about your little habit? I whispered. Ethan's face drained of color. And Olivia? For the first time she looked nervous. What habit? She demanded. I smiled. Oh, you'll find out soon enough. Ethan knew exactly what I was talking about. And from the look on Olivia's face, she was starting to wonder if she had made a mistake. Good. Because I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I turned on my heel, heading for the door. But before I left, I glanced over my shoulder, giving Ethan one final look. Enjoy your new life, I said. I have a feeling it won't last. And then, I walked out of that office without looking back. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. Leaving Ethan's office that night should have felt like closure. Like I had finally walked away from the disaster he had turned my life into. But instead all I felt was rage. Not because I wanted him back. No. That ship had long sailed. It was because he and Olivia had played me for a fool. And I refused to let them get away with it. For days I debated what to do next. I could have ignored them, moved on, built a new life. But that wasn't enough. Ethan had humiliated me. He had accused me of cheating, destroyed my reputation among our friends, and made me question my own worth. I wouldn't let that slide. I wouldn't let them think they had won. And so I dug I started looking into Ethan's finances, into his recent behavior, into everything I had ignored when I was too blinded by love to see the truth. And then I found it. The one thing that would bring his world crashing down. Ethan had always been a control freak when it came to money. Even when we were married, he had insisted on handling our accounts. I had trusted him. But now, going through our old financial records, I noticed something odd. A series of payments, large ones, being funneled into a private account. An account I had never known existed. At first, I assumed the worst. Had he been stealing from me? Had he been hiding money for his affair? But when I dug deeper, I realized this wasn't about Olivia. This was about something much, much worse. I tracked the transactions to a name I didn't recognize. A woman. One I had never heard of before. And the more I searched, the clearer it became. Ethan had a child. A child with another woman. A woman he had been secretly supporting for years. My heart raced. This wasn't just about an affair with Olivia. Ethan had been hiding an entire second life. And Olivia? She had no idea. I could have kept this information to myself. But where was the fun in that? After all, Olivia had made it her mission to steal my husband. It was only fair that I showed her exactly who she had won. So I did something bold. I arranged for a meeting. Not with Ethan. With Olivia. At first, she refused to meet me. She sent snarky texts saying things like, "I don't see the point of this, Emma. You lost. Accept it and move on." But then I sent her a picture. A picture of the woman and child Ethan had been secretly supporting. And suddenly, she was very interested in meeting. We met at an upscale cafe, a place Ethan used to take me when we were happy. When Olivia arrived, she was smug at first. But the second she sat down, I slid the documents across the table. Her smirk vanished. "What is this?" she asked, her voice uncertain. I leaned forward. "This," I said, tapping the papers. "This is your future." She flipped through the files, her face paling with every page. "You're lying," she whispered. I chuckled. "Olivia, haven't you figured it out by now? I don't need to lie. Your perfect boyfriend already did that for me." She swallowed hard. "Why are you showing me this?" I tilted my head. "Because I think it's time you learn exactly what kind of man you stole." She kept reading, her fingers trembling as she skimmed through the evidence. And then she froze. Because on the last page was a paternity test. Proof that Ethan had been supporting his child for over 4 years. A child Olivia had never known existed. I watched as the realization sank in. The smugness drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "You thought you won," I murmured, sipping my coffee. She looked up at me, her eyes wild with panic. And for the first time, I saw it. The doubt. The fear. She had wanted my life. Now she had it. And she was realizing that it wasn't the prize she thought it would be. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need to go," she muttered, grabbing her purse. I smirked. "Oh, I bet you do." She turned and stormed out of the cafe, her hands shaking. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Because the damage was already done. By the time Olivia confronted Ethan, I imagine it was spectacular. She would have screamed, thrown things, demanded the truth. And Ethan? He would have tried to talk his way out of it. But deep down he knew. His perfect little affair had just crumbled. I never saw how it ended for them. But a few weeks later, I got a text. From Olivia. "I hate you." I laughed. She had taken my husband, my life, my dignity. But now she was learning a hard lesson. And I was just getting started. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about taking back everything they had tried to steal from me. My power. My freedom. And most importantly, my future. And I was just getting started. After exposing Ethan's secret to Olivia, I expected chaos to unfold between them. What I didn't expect was for it to happen so soon. Barely a week had passed before their perfect little world started crumbling. And this time, I didn't have to do a thing. It started with a public argument, one I hadn't planned on witnessing. I had gone to meet a client for coffee at one of my favorite spots, a place Ethan and I used to frequent. As I sipped my cappuccino, voices suddenly rose near the entrance. I turned instinctively and there they were, Ethan and Olivia. And they were fighting. I wasn't the only one who noticed. People began staring, murmuring as the argument escalated. Olivia's face was red with fury, her hands moving wildly as she spat words at Ethan. For years, Ethan. For years you kept this from me? Ethan looked around, clearly embarrassed. Can we not do this here? Oh, you want privacy now? Olivia sneered. That's rich, coming from the man who had a whole secret family while accusing his wife of cheating. A few people gasped. The words hung in the air like poison. I stirred my coffee, amused. I had wondered if Olivia would stay. If she would forgive Ethan even after learning the truth. But now, it was clear she was unraveling. Ethan grabbed her wrist, trying to guide her toward the door. But Olivia yanked her arm away, eyes flashing. I gave up everything for you, Ethan, she hissed. Her voice cracked slightly, but she wasn't done. And you want to know the worst part? I thought I was better than Emma. I thought I won. She let out a bitter laugh. But now I see it. I see exactly why she left. Because you're a pathetic liar. Ethan's jaw clenched. Olivia, that's enough. Oh, I don't think it is. Olivia crossed her arms. Then for the final blow she turned her gaze toward me. I arched an eyebrow, feigning surprise as if I hadn't been listening to every word. Olivia's smirk was gone. Now there was just resentment. You knew, she said, her voice laced with realization. I took a slow sip of my coffee. I did. Ethan tensed beside her. Olivia let out a bitter laugh. Of course you did. You set me up. I tilted my head. Olivia. You set yourself up. I just handed you the truth. Her hands curled into fists. I hate you, she whispered. I smiled. No, sweetheart. You hate yourself. With that, Olivia grabbed her bag and stormed out. Ethan didn't follow her. He just stood there looking like a fool. The entire cafe was silent. All eyes were on him. And for the first time, he finally felt what I had felt. Humiliation. I stood up, grabbing my purse. As I passed Ethan, I paused. Then, without looking at him, I whispered one final truth. She was right, you know. His breath hitched. You are pathetic. Then I walked out, leaving him to drown in his own mess. That was the last time I saw Olivia. She vanished after that, no longer interested in being the woman who won Ethan's love. But Ethan? He wasn't done yet. No. Because after everything, after losing me, Olivia, and his perfect little lie, he finally realized what he had thrown away. And he wasn't about to let me go without a fight. For weeks after Olivia left him, Ethan tried to reach me. First it was subtle. A few missed calls. A text message that simply read, "Can we talk?" I ignored them all. I had nothing to say to him. He had made his bed. Now he had to lie in it. But Ethan? He wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat. When the texts and calls didn't work, he started showing up. At my workplace. At my apartment. Even at the coffee shop I frequented, like some pathetic ghost haunting my new life. One evening I walked out of my office to find him waiting by my car. Dressed in the same suit I once loved, looking like the man I used to adore. Except now. Now all I saw was regret. And I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. Emma, please, he said as I walked past him, refusing to slow down. Just 5 minutes. I sighed, unlocking my car. Ethan, I have nothing to say to you. I know I messed up. His voice cracked slightly. Emma, I lost everything. I froze, turning to him with a cold stare. Oh, so now that you're miserable, you remember I exist? He winced, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't know what I had until it was gone. I let out a dry laugh. Wow, that's original. Ethan stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. I'm serious, Emma. I know I hurt you. But you have to believe me, I was confused. I was stupid. I arched a brow. Stupid is an understatement. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I should have fought for us, he admitted. I should have never listened to Olivia. She manipulated me. I cut him off with a sharp look. Don't you dare put this on her. My voice was firm. Unyielding. Yes, Olivia is a snake. But you made the choice to betray me. You made the choice to accuse me of cheating while you were the one sneaking around. His face paled. I don't know why I did it. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. I murmured. Ethan swallowed. Why? I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. Because you never really loved me, I said softly. His eyes widened. That's not true. Yes, it is. I took a step forward, watching as he flinched under my scrutiny. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have doubted me so easily. You wouldn't have needed an excuse to leave. And you sure as hell wouldn't have thrown away everything we built together over a cheap thrill with Olivia. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. Because deep down, he knew I was right. For a long moment we just stood there. Me strong and unshaken. And Ethan looking like a man who had just realized he had lost something he could never get back. Finally, I broke the silence. I forgive you, Ethan. His head snapped up. You do. I nodded. Not for you. For me. Forgiveness wasn't about absolving him of his sins. It wasn't about giving him another chance. It was about setting myself free. Because I refused to carry his betrayal any longer. It wasn't mine to bear. It was his burden now. Ethan's lips parted like he wanted to say something. Beg maybe. But I didn't let him. Instead I smiled. A soft, knowing smile. Goodbye, Ethan. Then I got in my car, started the engine and drove away. Without a second glance. Without hesitation. Without regret. That was the last time I ever saw him. Because I wasn't just moving on. I was moving up. And Ethan? He would spend the rest of his life watching from a distance. For the first time in years I felt free. Not just from Ethan but from the pain, the betrayal and the weight of his lies. He had tried to drag me down with him. But I had refused. Now I was finally stepping into a new life. One where he no longer existed. At first it was strange. To wake up without feeling like I had something to prove. To go about my day without carrying the burden of a failing marriage. But with each passing moment I felt lighter. Happier. Stronger. My career flourished. I was no longer the woman behind Ethan's success. I was Emma. The woman who had built something incredible for herself. Clients began recognizing me. My colleagues respected me. And soon I was making a name for myself in the industry. One evening, while attending a networking event, I found myself standing in front of a familiar face. A man I had worked with before my marriage had fallen apart. He had always been kind, intelligent, and ridiculously handsome. But back then, I had been too blind to see what was right in front of me. He smiled, tilting his head. Emma. It's been a while. I returned the smile. For once it felt effortless. It has, I agreed. You look good. His smirk deepened. So do you? Happier. I let out a small laugh. That's because I am. And for the first time I meant it. Nick and I talked for hours that night. There was no pressure, no rush. Just two people reconnecting, sharing stories and laughing in a way I hadn't in years. It was easy. Natural. And when he walked me to my car there was a moment. A hesitation. An unspoken question hanging between us. I could feel my heartbeat quicken. Was I ready? To open my heart again? To trust? To love? Nick must have sensed my hesitation because he smiled, stepping back. No pressure, he said softly. But when you are ready I'd love to take you to dinner. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. And then, I nodded. Dinner sounds nice. As I drove home that night I couldn't stop smiling. Because this time I wasn't rushing into something out of loneliness. I wasn't trying to fill a void left by Ethan. This was something new. Something that belonged to me. And Ethan? Where was he now? Alone. Regretting every decision that had led him to this moment. Well, I was finally living. Ethan had always been arrogant. Even when he lost, he never truly believed he had lost everything. Some part of him, I was sure, had thought that one day I would come back. That I would forgive him. That I would still be the woman who once loved him. But the moment he realized the truth, the moment he saw me with someone else, that was the moment his world shattered. It happened at a charity gala. The kind of event Ethan used to love, filled with wealthy executives, photographers, and business deals disguised as polite conversation. I hadn't planned on seeing him there. But when I walked into the grand ballroom arm in arm with Nick, the air shifted. Ethan was there. And he saw me. His eyes widened, his body stiffening as his gaze locked onto mine. For a brief second I saw something flash across his face. Pain. Maybe even jealousy. Nick, oblivious to the storm brewing behind us, leaned down with a charming grin. You look incredible tonight. I smiled up at him. So do you. And then, as if the universe wanted to destroy Ethan even more, Nick reached down and brushed a soft kiss against my cheek. I didn't need to turn around to know what Ethan was feeling. I could feel it. The regret. The realization. The absolute devastation of knowing that he was watching his former wife, his once loyal wife, fall for another man. And the best part? He couldn't do a damn thing about it. I did eventually turn around, letting my eyes meet his. But I wasn't the broken woman he had left behind. I wasn't pleading, crying, begging him to take me back. I was whole. Happy. And Ethan? He looked like a man drowning in regret. I could have walked over to him. I could have thrown a cutting remark his way, something about how he had ruined the best thing he ever had. But instead, I did nothing. Because my happiness was revenge enough. For the rest of the night I could feel his stare. I could hear the whispers from those around him, people who used to admire him but now pitied him. He was no longer the charming husband with a perfect marriage. He was the man who lost it all. And I was the woman who had risen from the ashes. Before we left the event, I turned back one last time. Ethan was still standing in the same place. Still watching me. Still stuck in the past. I met his gaze, gave him a final smile, and then I walked away. And this time, I never looked back. After the charity gala, I expected silence from Ethan. I had moved on. I had found happiness. And he had been forced to watch it unfold. That should have been enough to make him let go. But Ethan? He wasn't done losing yet. A week later, I came home to find a familiar car parked outside my apartment. Ethan, leaning against the hood of his sleek black sedan, looking like a man on the verge of falling apart. I sighed, gripping my keys tighter. I didn't have time for this. As I approached my building, he straightened. Emma, he called out. Please. Just a minute. I stopped in my tracks, debating whether to just walk past him. But something about the way he looked at me, like he was drowning and I was the only thing keeping him afloat, made me pause. I folded my arms. What do you want, Ethan? He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. I need to talk to you, he said. Face to face. No games, no accusations. Just the truth. I raised an eyebrow. Now you care about the truth? He flinched. I didn't care. Ethan let out a slow breath. I made a mistake, Emma. I laughed, shaking my head. Oh, you think? I didn't realize what I had. I held up a hand. Stop. His jaw tensed. This isn't some dramatic redemption arc where you confess your sins and I forgive you, I said coldly. Ethan looked pained. But I wasn't done. I want you to hear me, Ethan. He swallowed, nodding. You accused me of cheating. You humiliated me. You threw me away like I meant nothing, all for someone who wasn't even worth it. His eyes darkened. I know. And now? I tilted my head. You regret it? He nodded slowly. Well, guess what? I whispered. I don't care. Ethan stiffened. Emma, please. No, my voice was sharp, final. I spent months crying over you. Months trying to figure out what I did wrong. But you know what I finally realized? Ethan held his breath. I took a step closer. You were never the man I thought you were. His entire body went still. You weren't my soulmate. You weren't my partner. You were just a mistake I had to make in order to find the person I was actually meant to be with. Ethan's breathing became uneven. His hands clenched at his sides, his entire body shaking. I love you, Emma, he said suddenly, voice breaking. I laughed. Not out of cruelty but out of sheer disbelief. Love. I shook my head. You don't love me, Ethan. I do, he insisted, stepping forward. I took a step back. His expression cracked. I looked him in the eyes, letting him see how little he meant to me now. This conversation is over. He inhaled sharply. Emma, don't. I turned around. And just before I walked away, I said the words that finally broke him. I love someone else. Ethan staggered back. Like I had just punched him in the gut. Like he had finally understood what he had lost. But it was too late. It had been too late for a long time. I walked into my apartment, shutting the door behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Ethan was my past. Nick was my future. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. Ethan's desperate plea meant nothing to me. He had destroyed us, and now he wanted to piece back together something that was already dust in the wind. But life had moved on. And I had too. Nick and I weren't rushing anything. He wasn't some rebound, some quick fix for my heartbreak. He was just there. Steady. Patient. A quiet kind of strength that I had never known before. He never asked me about Ethan. He never pushed me to define us before I was ready. Said he waited. And that made all the difference. Because this time, I wasn't falling for someone who made me feel small. I was falling for someone who made me feel like I could conquer the world. Ethan, however, couldn't stand it. A few weeks after our last encounter, I received another text. Emma, please, just talk to me. One last time. I deleted it. Then he showed up. At my office. At my favorite coffee shop. Even at a charity event that I attended with Nick. He wasn't letting go. But the more he tried, the sadder he looked. The more pathetic. The more desperate. At the charity event he stood across the room watching. Watching as I laughed with Nick. Watching as Nick placed a hand on my back in that protective, possessive way. Watching as I finally looked happy. And when our eyes met, I could see it. The moment he realized he would never have me again. I turned back to Nick, letting Ethan fade into the background. Because that's where he belonged. In the past, I had spent so much time wondering what my life would be without him. But now I wondered why I had ever been afraid to let him go. That night as Nick walked me to my door he hesitated. Then softly he asked, "Would you ever let me take you on a real date?" I smiled. Because this time I wasn't hesitating. "Yes," I whispered. "I'd like that." And as I stepped inside, heart light, I knew. I had finally closed the door on my past. Ethan had been my lesson. Nick was my new beginning. And nothing had ever felt more right. Months passed and my life became unrecognizable, but in the best way. I wasn't just healing. I was thriving. Work was incredible. I had found love again. And most importantly, I had found myself. Nick was nothing like Ethan. There were no power struggles. No mind games. No walking on eggshells wondering if I was good enough. With Nick I was safe. I was seen. I was loved. Ethan, however, his life had spiraled. After Olivia left him, his career took a massive hit. People whispered about his affairs, his lies, and the way he had ruined everything. I didn't care. He was a ghost from my past. One I had left behind. And then came the moment that proved just how much I had changed. Nick and I had been dating for a year when he planned a weekend getaway. A quiet cabin, just the two of us, away from the chaos of the city. I should have seen it coming. But when Nick got down on one knee, my heart stopped. "Emma," he said, voice soft but sure. "I have never met someone as strong, as kind, or as brilliant as you." He pulled out a simple, elegant ring. One that suited me perfectly. "I don't want to just love you. I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget how loved you are." Tears blurred my vision. Because this was everything Ethan had never been. This was real. I said yes. Without hesitation. Without fear. Because for the first time I wasn't just choosing love. I was choosing happiness. I was choosing me. And Ethan was nothing but a fading memory. The day of my engagement party was supposed to be perfect. And it was. Family, friends, laughter. Everything Ethan and I had never been. I had moved on. I had won. But Ethan, he hadn't. And on the night I was supposed to celebrate my future, he tried to drag me back into the past. It happened toward the end of the night. Nick had stepped away to talk to a friend when I felt a presence behind me. And there he was. Ethan. Looking like a man who had lost everything. I sighed, crossing my arms. "What are you doing here?" He swallowed, eyes flickering toward the engagement ring on my hand. "I had to see you," he admitted. "One last time." I stared at him, unimpressed. "You don't get a last time, Ethan. You had your chance." His jaw tightened. "I know. I expected anger. I expected desperation. But instead, I saw something else. Defeat." Because for the first time he truly understood. I was gone. And I was never coming back. He let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry, Emma." I blinked. "For what?" "For everything." His voice broke. "For lying. For cheating. For blaming you when I was the one who ruined us." I didn't say anything. Because I didn't need to. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I loved you," he whispered. "In my own way." I shook my head, smiling softly. "No, Ethan. You didn't." His eyes widened. "If you had loved me," I continued, voice steady, "you would have never let me go." Ethan looked away. For the first time he had no excuse. No why. No justification. Just the truth. And the truth was? He had destroyed the best thing he ever had. And there was no way to fix it. After a long moment he gave me a sad smile. "Take care, Emma." I smiled back. "I already am." And then he turned and walked away. For the last time. Nick returned a moment later, slipping an arm around my waist. Everything okay? He asked gently. I smiled up at him. Yes. Because for the first time in my life, everything was perfect. Ethan had lost me. But I had found everything I ever wanted. And that was the greatest revenge of all.